Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw us some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Nile.
And I'm Kyle. And this week I decided to sit while we're recording, crisscross applesauce.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which it's occurring to me. I've never done that before.
For the show?
For the show.
Yeah.
And also definitely not on this chair. So one, if you hear a loud crash at any point, and then I come back to there, or maybe there's an edit there, and I come back to the show and I sound like a man who has just hurt himself. That's how it happened. One.
Okay.
Two, I was kind of thinking maybe it could I could get my chakras sort of right for this episode. Okay. Like so many episodes before us, I have no idea what we're about to get into, and I just figured that would be a good way to brace myself, is to have my root chakra, which is, I think, in your asshole, and get that real nice and comfy for this episode.
You gotta align all those things so that you're fully ready to podcast. Because the most important part of podcasting is all of the meditation you do ahead of time.
Right.
To prepare yourself to be in the correct state to podcast.
I do worry that if you tell me anything too shocking, I've really trained my trained is a bad word for it. I'm realizing.
Are you going to say you trained your asshole? Is that what we're going to? Kyle, did you accidentally search anal training set when trying to do meditation?
Oh, Jesus. No,
fun sites?
That wasn't meditation. No, I got my root chakra, my asshole chakra, really, the energy is very focused there right now. And what that was leading to is I'm worried if you tell me anything too shocking, I'll clench up real suddenly and I'll fly off the seat.
Yeah.
So
all the orgone energy you've got stored in there is going to come out at once.
It's going to fucking burst one way or another. So, but hopefully not in the middle of recording. So. On the scale of shocking, I don't really know where this lands because it is kind of a weird topic for us. Oh, really?
Yes, in that it is. Kyle, today we're going to talk about the airship wave of 1896.
Airship wave? Wait, sorry, say that again. Airship wave of what?
1896.
1896.
So in the year 1896, there was a wave of sightings of mystery airships of spectacular sizes, shapes, levels of nudity of the people involved in them.
Hold on.
Seen across America.
All right. First of all, I had my chakra and my orgone all pent up, and then you had to mention nude people as well. You're testing me today. I can tell.
Yeah, that's kind of unintentional. I just thought that the nudity is a very small part of this episode. This isn't a pervert cast.
Oh, okay.
But there is a story of a maybe some people piloting an airship doing Adam and Eve cosplay. If you want.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. So they were fucking in the airship, maybe. Or did Adam and Eve hang on? I'm going to ask a really stupid question. Is that cool? Did Adam and Eve actually fuck?
I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
They
Because like after they
because they
taste
do have
the
Cain and Abel are their two sons.
okay, and then they sort of had like a threesome sort of situation with the snake there.
The snake was used merely as a marital aid, as the Bible
Perfect.
would prefer. So,
right, because like they taste the fruit of knowledge and suddenly they know about fucking. They're like, oh shit, well we got to do this now.
yes, they are quote unquote aware of their nakedness.
Right.
So
right,
take that
right.
as you will. Yeah. So this episode, we'll see if we get through all of this in one episode or if it becomes a two-parter. I'm honestly not sure, because this is a really weird case that I was trying to figure out if I was going to try to reverse engineer this into like a reveal, but I think I'm just going to put this out there because this is tied to one of the earliest supposed UFO cases in modern American history.
Mm-hmm.
And the Texas UFO flap of 1897. Now, those are, of course, as you can tell, years that follow each other, 1896 and 1897. And I started out this episode trying to be about a specific UFO crash in Texas in 1897 that we're going to get to eventually, called the Aurora UFO incident, or the Aurora, Texas incident, whatever you want to call it. And that led me to the UFO flap of 1897. And then on a source that I was reading, it started talking about how it didn't actually start in Texas, and it started at the end of 1896 in California. And then I started looking stuff up and found that there was, on entirely separate websites and places that don't always reference each other, stuff about the mysterious airship wave of 1896. So this is like a run of stuff, of like newspaper stories. This is like pretty heavily documented in newspaper form, in that the stories were told, not that they were like presented a lot of evidence or anything.
Just that the stories of it happening were recorded a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
There are a lot of accounts of people seeing mystery airships in the years 1896 and 1897. And the way that it got turned into a UFO thing in Texas in 1897 involves the research of in the 1970s by people like Jacques Vallée, looking into it as a UFO case.
That makes sense.
There's this weird crossover of like fun stories about people seeing like steampunk airships flying over them and like talking to the pilots and shit. And then there's also cases that are now have been absorbed into UFO lore. And these places don't always reference each other. So I didn't, for a while starting to research this, I didn't realize that the Texas UFO flap was part of this airship wave. But in reality, they're one and the same, baby.
Interesting. I don't think I've heard of any of this. I mean, I'm aware of the idea of like sightings of things that we would now classify as UFOs throughout history. Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
But the idea of there being a flap in the late 19th century is new to me. Like when I think of like historical accounts being referenced as evidence of like UFOs visiting Earth throughout our history, I think of like there's that like medieval painting or whatever of like all the lights in the sky.
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of like religious artwork that will have like flying things in the background and shooting stars that get kind of interpreted as UFOs. But this is a weird spot for a bunch of UFO sightings because I don't think of like the 1890s as like a time where like we're so disconnected from like the context of what was being said or made or written down that we like can't understand. So we have to say, well, it's UFOs because like there's good explanations for all the things that I mentioned, but that's, from way before the late 19th century. So this is interesting.
This was a pretty fun topic to look into because it's like it has the fun element of there just being a bunch of bug nut stories of people saying they saw something weird, and you're like, oh, that's fun. But then it also has these like, there's maybe like a cover up angle, and it also, I found like a tangential third episode to this, if this ends up being a two-parter, that I am going to do in the future.
Before we get into it, were you able to kind of pick apart the original context from the ufologizing of it, you know, like
Somewhat.
like okay.
There
'Cause
is
tends
like
to
a
happen.
there is like a timeline to this stuff, and honestly, the fact that this still gets talked about both on some places as just an airship thing, and then other places as a UFO flap, almost helps with that, because a lot of times one is going to reference a lot more original documents than the other, because the UFO thing is it's not that it like fully didn't exist when this first happened, but it was
Not in the same way.
it's been retroactively looked at in the lens of modern ufology, which is easier to kind of piece out than the original source. So anyway, where this all begins is the night of November 17th, 1896 in Sacramento, California. This was like just a rainy, kind of shitty night. And all of a sudden, through the clouds, a bright light started to appear, and it started to move slowly west about 1,000 feet above the roofs of the houses in the area. And quite a few different people saw this light, including George Scott, who is an assistant to the Secretary of State of California. Supposedly, throughout this, like the early parts of this flap, 2 different mayors, I think, in like various actual like governmental officials were quoted as having seen some airships. Like it's kind of interesting looking at it from that perspective. And so Scott got some friends to go out to the observation deck above the Capitol dome, and they could see from up there that this was actually 3 lights, not 1. And above the lights, there was this dark shape, this kind of long, rounded, dark shape. The most detailed report of the evening comes from a guy named R.L. Lowry, who was a former railway employee who heard like he like was basically talked to from above, said and it said, "Throw her up higher, she'll hit the steeple." And when he looked up, he saw that these 2 men were seated in like a bicycle frame, like a tandem bicycle thing. And above them there was this cigar-shaped thing.
Could you I mean, like a blimp maybe? I mean, that sounds
basically we're basically talking about a blimp with a bicycle attached to it. A bicycle frame and these 2 guys attached to it with these really bright lights.
I'm gonna say something stupid. Is that do I have permission to be dumb? I don't remember when the Wright brothers were doing their thing.
What's funny is specifically while researching this topic, so many fucking sources that I was reading about this straight up started with some variation of the sentence. Now, this was 6 years before the Wright brothers first took flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. So, like, it's funny because they use that as a qualifying bit of information for all of this. So I can specifically tell you this is approximately 6 years before.
What I would say about that, too, though, that I'm sure you don't need to hear from me, but I'm just going to say it so that we had been trying to figure out flight for a while. Before the Wright brothers finally, actually managed to do it. So
yeah, the Wright brothers weren't the only people trying to take flight.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. I guess like the skeptic side of me wants to be like, well, if this person's story is true, maybe they saw somebody who glided down from somewhere but didn't manage to actually take flight. So
Kyle.
Oh boy.
I have some stuff for you later on that aspect. Not on this case specifically, but about this whole wave. There is some analysis from an unlikely source that I found.
Oh, I can't wait.
That one of the most extensive articles I found, I'll just say this now, fuck it. One of the most extensive articles I found about this whole phenomenon of this 1896 airship wave.
Can I guess?
I will give you, do you want a clue or do you want to just guess?
I'm just gonna guess.
Okay.
Because it seems like their kind of thing. I'm gonna guess it was cracked.
No. That's a good call.
Okay.
I did find an article for the tangential thing that kind of put me down another side rabbit hole from the Atlantic, which is like a bunch of people who used to write for Cracked, I think, work there. But,
Okay.
no, someone that I believe I did an episode on this person. James Rink from Super Soldier Talk.
Oh shit! What the hell?
Supposedly,
is
this is a subject that this guy is just like fascinated with.
Okay.
And eventually, at the end of it, he tried to link it to this mystery
Super
airship
Soldier
flap.
program.
Not specifically, but more or less, he tried to link it to black budget operations.
Oh,
So it's
okay. All right.
which is really funny to think about it being like a black budget op in 1896. But
yes, it is.
yeah. So anyway, that was, I was so shocked when I was trying to Google stuff for this or whatever. I was searching for sources and stuff. I saw Super Soldier Talk and I was like,
Oh, jeez.
why is this coming up? And I clicked it and it was a really helpful source.
Just to be clear, Super Soldier Talk is a website dedicated to talking about super soldier stuff.
And specifically people who are interviewing or are themselves people who were supposed ex-members of Super Soldier.
They claim to be ex-super soldiers. So yeah.
Yes, we've done Project Superman and a 3-part episode, and I did a return to some Super Soldier stuff on another episode like a year ago or something. I don't know. So you can check those out in the backlogs. So yeah, it turns out this guy saw what amounted to a blimp by way of bicycle parts. And he said that the thing also had these wheels at the side, like the side wheels on an old steamboat.
Okay.
So I don't know how this thing works, but I don't think anyone back then knew how it worked either. But this was the craft that was first seen in the mystery airship wave. The story hit the newspapers the next day with the headline, "Claim they saw a flying airship, strange tale of Sacramento men not addicted to prevarication viewed an aerial courser as it passes over the city at night. What was it?"
Oh my God. I want to stuff the person who wrote that in a locker. That's a bit much, don't you think?
I mean, it's really like old. Some little kid should be shouting that on a street corner.
Yeah.
It's very old carnival barker. Like anytime I read an old newspaper headline from when I'm researching something and it sounds like something Stan Lee would have written, I'm immediately like, okay, that's probably a pretty good headline for the time.
Yeah. Yes.
So this was the first story about it. The word airship started to kind of take, and any of the so this kind of started all of the future events being linked to the term airship. Whereas other papers at the time also started to report mysterious light or quote unquote a wandering apparition. So even from the very beginning, people were ridiculing the stories. Not everyone was. This didn't like take the nation by storm and everyone believed in it, but there were people that believed in it and were interested in it, and there were also people who took it as just like a joke, as a funny thing, or they thought it was some form of hoax.
Do you happen to know? I have a feeling you'll have an answer for this. Do you happen to know if this predates Jules Verne's bullshit?
I honestly don't know that off the top of
Because
my head.
I don't actually know when. I feel like it was like in the early 20th century, but I've never actually read Jules Verne. But I know that like Jules Verne's whole shit is responsible for like steampunk nerds, essentially. So I was just curious if that was something that came before or after this event. I'll find out.
Looks like that was published in 1872. Around the World in 80 Days was 1872.
A bit before. Okay.
So like you're in the right era in terms of the thinking here.
Right.
So yeah, so the idea of an airship was already in science fiction of the time, but it became a thing that people were kind of looking out for at this point. 5 days after its first appearance, the airship came back on a Sunday night. A little bit later, Yet again, dark and overcast. A light appeared from the northwest and just went straight over the whole town, going against the wind, supposedly. A witness named Jacob Zamansky had a small telescope and reported that the lamp was an electric light of intense power, the light that they were seeing. He also said that it didn't move in a straight line, but seemed to bob up and down in the wind. Other people would see the same thing on the same night and report kind of little details like that there was some dark thing, presumably the big balloon above it. Or at least I think it's probably a balloon. If you're trying to make this thing work, it has to have like a big fucking balloon strapped to it, right?
Yeah.
And it took approximately 30 minutes in total to cross from one side of the city to the other, leaving in the southwest side of the city. And over this time period, thousands of people observed it, including the city's deputy sheriff and a district attorney. But the same night, an airship also appeared above San Francisco, approximately 90 miles away from this place. It was also observed by hundreds of people, including the mayor, and then went as far as the Pacific Ocean and shone like a big searchlight out over the ocean, which I guess frightened seals in the area. And so, like, over the next few days, sightings were starting to spread out over Washington State, even in Canada, but there were more things. Just like it started to pick up in frequency. There were sightings happening all the time.
Now, if we're operating under the assumption that this is actually somebody with a balloon vehicle that's letting them do this, it would have to be somebody like no just like regular old jamook is fucking flying around with a balloon. This is somebody who has the money to get a balloon that can do that. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, it would be that is the thing. Like that is most okay. The third episode that I didn't do research for this time is about a guy who supposedly started an aerial club or aero club in that time period to make airships. And he's this fucking weird dude that also may or may not have existed, and the club may or may not have existed.
Okay.
But it's part of this whole, like, the type of people that were trying to make these things at the time. There are people that were trying to make these airships that seem to be kind of eccentric people. And so there is, like, some chance that people just were making these things and especially, like, I don't know how much of a real thing, how pervasive this was, but also, like, there are reports that a bunch of this stuff was made up by people who were part of what kept getting referred to as a liars club that seemed to basically just prank the public. And there's all of these things. Like, I'm doing this all out of order because it just is a big mess of information that's kind of hard to give a strict narrative to because it just kind of pieces off in a million directions. But the things, if you look at this as something that actually happened, what made it happen is very strange. I don't personally know how I feel about it actually being a thing that happened or not, because there's some stuff we'll get to later. But it's interesting looking at this turn of the century time period where people were starting to figure out things like flight, and that became a thing that people were experimenting with. And maybe someone just made a balloon that they could get up in the air and terrorize towns all over California, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I could kind of see that. And it would be extra funny if it was literally just like, I want to prank California. So I'm sending a balloon over their whole shit. And if I catch some seals with the prank too, that's just bonus points.
So in this time period as well, on November 19th, 1896, in Stockton, California, there was what is, some people claim this is the earliest published account of an explicitly extraterrestrial kidnapping or an attempted kidnapping in history.
Okay.
So we go from talking about this is what makes this doing research on this topic so fucking weird, is because we go from people seeing someone in a big airship balloon with a bike frame attached to it and a floodlight to this story, and these happened like 2 days apart. So a guy named Colonel H.G. Shaw claimed that he was driving his buggy through the countryside near Stockton, California, when he came across a downed spacecraft. He described it as having a metallic surface, which was completely featureless, apart from a rudder and pointed ends. It was approximately 25 feet in diameter and around 150 feet in total length. There were 3 slender, 7-foot-tall extraterrestrials who approached him coming out of the craft while emitting a strange warbling noise. They then went and checked out his buggy and then physically tried to force him to accompany them back into the downed airship. They eventually gave up after realizing that they weren't strong enough to physically force Shaw aboard. Then they went back to their ship, took it off the ground, and sped off into the night sky.
Okay.
Shaw claimed that these beings were Martians sent to kidnap an Earthling for an unknowable but nefarious purpose.
Okay, what the fuck? So he reported this story himself and to like what? The newspapers?
The Daily Mail in Stockton, California.
Oh boy. Okay, interesting. So
Yeah, it's like I don't know how to combine that story with the weird airships.
well, I mean, regardless of whether or not this guy was aware of the sightings of these airships, science fiction is in the air. It's a thing that's sort of, because as far as I understand it, it was like the 19th century where we started to see the first sci-fi stories, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Jules Verne is already writing. You're getting the early versions of that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know. It's a lot of the early stories of alien people witnessing things like this. It's always like, well, this is very like probably inspired by science fiction stuff that's going around like in books and things. So I don't know, but so I don't know whether it even does relate. But if you go back and you see that somebody has said that to a newspaper in the same time period, then the UFO people are going to be like, look, see, there's evidence that the things that people were seeing back then were UFOs and all that. So
yeah, so these stories started to kind of spread, and people started trying to come up with explanations. The people that believed it at all, they started to think that this was the work of some mysterious inventor who would test his device at night to try to avoid the ideas being stolen, something like that. Like our recluse genius that is making this flying machine and doesn't want it to be stolen from him. So that
any time travel theories?
Not at the time. I don't think. I don't think there's any time travel stuff.
Okay.
That I found for this.
Interesting.
That would actually be interesting if someone tried. You could probably force that in there, but not that I found. So
okay.
There was supposedly this San Francisco attorney who was nicknamed Airship Collins. He claimed that he was representing this eccentric and wealthy inventor who had created this secret device that he was storing in Oroville, just 60 miles north of Sacramento. And according to Airship Collins, this airship was 150 feet long and could carry 15 passengers. It was built this is a quote from what he told people. It was built on the aeroplane system and has 2 canvas wings 18 feet wide and a rudder shaped like a bird's tail. I saw the thing ascend about 90 feet under perfect control. Now, when he kept going around town making this claim and seemingly trying to, profit off of it somehow, and the mysterious inventor never appeared, he started to get ridiculed by all the people he was telling the story to and backed off a lot of his claims and kind of sunk back into the, probably started going back to ambulance chasing or something. I don't know.
To be regular Collins?
Yeah. I hope he kept the nickname. You know,
you don't think people like he would go try and spread this story, and like stupid people would be like, well, now hold on. It's in his name. Let's hear him out.
True. That is true. It would be funny if that made it work, because the next guy, not only was there one lawyer who took up the nickname Airship Collins, when he stopped doing shit, there was another lawyer that came up and didn't even do the nickname thing.
Oh,
there was a lawyer named William Henry Hart, who's another San Francisco attorney.
Oh, I know the name.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds very familiar. And also, sorry, I thought you were saying that somebody else took on the title of Airship Collins, like it was a lineage that got passed down, or maybe a Santa Claus sort of scenario.
But I did think it was. I think that's so fucking weird that there were two lawyers who tried to make a buck off this thing in a row during this whole like furor. You know,
maybe furor.
I meant
fervor.
Like,
you meant fervor.
Jesus Christ. I realized that as I was right after I said it, and I didn't know if we were going to catch it or not.
It took me a moment to also realize what had been said.
Look, I'm leaving it in. I don't care.
We get it. You think that lawyers are Hitler? No, I mean, like, I guess though that like you could be like, you know, like maybe lawyers like are like, oh, how can I'm sorry. I've been watching a lot of Better Call Saul, and so I just assume there's a lot of like shyster lawyers out there.
Yeah,
so.
You're getting a lot of this is some real Slippin' Jimmy.
That's right.
Because William Henry Hart, who was a former attorney general, started to claim that there was not one airship but two, and they would be used to bomb Havana. He says, from what I have seen of it, I have not the least doubt that it will carry 4 men and 1,000 pounds of dynamite. Yet again, Hart's airship was never made public, and by the time December rolled around, the lawyer had kind of receded back into the Homer Simpson hedge when nothing
Yes.
came about. 2 months later, after 2 quiet months without any airship hoopla, on February 2nd, 1897, the airship showed up in the town of Hastings, Nebraska. And then on February 5th, it was seen 40 miles further south near the town of Invale. And it started to go all over the state. On February 16th, it was sighted over Omaha, Nebraska. Then a farmer claimed that he encountered the airship on the ground under repair. And there's even a story that I think I might have a little more on later, but there's like a story of, I don't know if it's this specific account with this farmer or if it's a different one, where the aliens like asked him for help in fixing their ship. So he went and got like his toolbox and helped the aliens like fix up this ship before it flew off. Like, there's a bunch of just weird stories that people put out there from this time period because everyone was just like, oh, airships are around. Here's my weird fucking story.
Yeah. Still projecting a lot of human stuff on them at this point.
Yes, very much so. And a lot of cases, like when people don't explicitly call them UFOs, there are a lot of them that are just airships and they're manned by humans that they talk to.
Yeah,
sometimes they're kind of weird humans. But then there are these ones scattered in that people say are actually extraterrestrials, and I don't fully know where all that comes from. So it continued going all the way around. It had been spotted all over the Midwest, including Texas, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri around throughout the year of 1897. And more stories about encounter with various crew members of the ship continued to kind of come out. The whole movement kind of ended in when the airship arrived in Chicago in April. And on April 11th, a photograph of the thing was supposedly taken, which some people will now claim is the first UFO photo in existence. However, most people think the photo is a fake.
Sure.
But then on April 15th, near Kalamazoo, Michigan, there were reports that the airship had actually crashed and exploded. People claim that so this is just a full quote. They declare the report to have been like that of heavy ordnance and to have been immediately succeeded by a distant sound of projectiles flying through the air. So basically, it just got blown to shit. And there were still some airship sightings come over the next couple days. even going so far as the full-blown East Coast. But all of a sudden, it just kind of faded out of existence, and by the end of April, the whole flap was basically over. Now, there are some strange things that some sources will go really like. There are a lot of different explanations for this. There's a lot of different theories about what's happening. We're going to get more into the UFO side of it here in a minute.
You're really beating around the bush here. Now, I'm going to be real with you. Can I be real with you?
Yeah.
You're beating around the bush. I'll say it.
Go ahead.
No, that's I'm saying what I'm saying it.
Okay.
I need you to be direct, and you need to tell me what's going on right now.
So
and go ahead.
There's some people who think that there's a likely culprit in the planet Venus. So at the time the sightings started, it was very prominent in the sky, but by the time everything stopped in April of the next year, it had gone from being the brightest object in the sky, except for the sun or moon, and it had gone out of like a long range of atmospheric conditions that made it look kind of strange. It looked like it would kind of move or blink or change color sometimes due to atmospheric conditions in this time period. That I think this is all actual stuff. So there's this theory that all of this bright light in the sky that looked kind of like it was acting strange and kind of bobbing up and down in the wind and all this stuff was just in actuality the planet Venus in the night sky going through kind of a strange time period in a certain quadrant of the sky. And people were just seeing that, and then their brain was filling in the fantastical.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a swamp gassy sort of explanation, because like, I don't know. I feel like, no planet gets bright enough to be that confusing, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was fucking crazy back in 1896. Fucking Jupiter was popping off. Mars was doing tricks in the sky, but I don't know. That's not how I've seen planets in the night sky, without a telescope. Like they're very, even it's cool because it's like, oh shit, that's brighter, and you can kind of see like maybe a tinge of color to it, but that sounds extra, I don't know. Yeah, a little dismissive maybe.
Yeah, like there had to have been something else going around. Like if the visual element was that, then there also had to be some fantastical element in terms of like, these people were really into the burgeoning science fiction books or something. Like there has to be some cultural factor that adds on to that to make it kind of fully work for me.
Yeah.
But I can see the, I kind of like the idea of it just being liars clubs, just like all getting carried away and trying to one up each other. Cause there is a certain amount of, once we get into just like, I've got just like stories of different sightings down here, that a lot of them do kind of sound like people writing kind of tall tales,
Yeah. I'm more inclined to believe the quote unquote mass hysteria explanation, which is like not really like a good term, but just like the way that these things spread, where one person reports one thing, whether or not it's true, and then it snowballs out of control and suddenly everybody's seeing it. That I'm more inclined to see that angle of things, and if somebody's telling tall tales that somehow get put out into like more like accessible media to the public, then that's what I'm leaning towards. But maybe there's some shit I don't know.
Yeah. So there was a historian that looked into this whole time period named Mike Dash, who summarized the whole, mystery airship wave of 1896 and 1897 this way. He said, not only were the mystery airships bigger, faster, and more robust than anything then produced by the aviators of the world, they seemed to be able to fly enormous distances, and some were equipped with giant wings. The 1896 to 97 airship wave is probably the best investigated of all historical anomalies. The files of almost 1,500 newspapers from across the United States have been combed for reports, an astonishing feat of research. The general conclusion of investigators was that a considerable number of the simpler sightings were misidentifications of planets and stars, and a large number of the more complex the result of hoaxes and practical jokes. A small residuum remains perplexing.
Okay, interesting.
So there are some that are just weird, but they think that a lot of it can be pretty easily explained away. So I've got like one more little story before we get into the Texas UFOs flap thing, just because I think this one's kind of interesting. This is an account from the kind of early on in the flap in Sacramento. Here it is. This is the repair thing. So an electrician in San Jose said that one of the airship pilots asked him to help with some repairs. He was brought to a field north of San Francisco to help out, and afterwards the pilot was so grateful that he took the electrician to Hawaii. The electrician claimed that the trip took 24 hours. However, later on, his wife said that he had been home in bed on the night that he claimed to go on this trip.
That's good. I like that. This guy's just making shit up for fun. He wants to go to Hawaii. He wants to see what Hawaii's all about. I imagine Hawaii, he's probably thinking nice vacation spot. Yeah. Maybe if this story blows up, then, somebody with the means would be like, look, we'll take you to Hawaii to investigate your case. And
and I think at the time Hawaii was like very exotic because this is like before it was in the US, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So like there wasn't a lot of, you probably wouldn't meet a lot of people who had been to Hawaii. So
sure.
There's also, this one is just like really short, but one man reported that an airship landed near his house and he talked to the pilot. The human pilot had a beard and he said that the ship, quote unquote, had come from the Montezuma Mountains. And that's the end of the story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's, that's I'll say it. That's nothing to me. That's I mean, it's an interest. It's funny to think that they had to come from somewhere. After hearing so many stories throughout my time doing this show of it's always coming from outer space. So
yeah. So I guess just thinking about how to divide this up. Let's go into this. So there's kind of a question that permeates a lot of this, like talking about this as a topic, of, is there a possibility that people at the time could have made airships like the ones being described in these sightings?
Yes, I would love to know.
So that we'll go ahead and go into this.
I'm inclined to lean towards probably not, but I mean, hot air balloons were a thing, right? Like that's
hot air balloons were old hat at the time. Like they were well established and used, and known very well at the time. So this is a thing I found online, talking about kind of whether or not the technology existed to do this at the time period. So they claim that yes, they're technically some technology on par with the airships that were talked about here did exist. And there is historical record of a few crude attempts to build similar things that date back even further, in like up to about 50 years before the reports of these aircraft in the San Francisco area. So so some of the earliest aircraft was in the 1870s in Europe. But even before then, an inventor named Solomon Andrews had begun pursuing ways to find, flight and airships construction here in the United States. He has a design that dates all the way back to 1847, which he was unsuccessful in gaining financial support to actually build. His project then resurfaced again in the 1860s, and has like this. Then the next part of this history is actually from the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery piece on this topic. He says, while serving with the Union Army in 1862, Andrews became convinced that a navigable, lighter-than-air craft would prove vastly superior to the untethered balloons that were used for military reconnaissance. He resigned his commission and, at his own expense, began constructing the world's first self-propelled steerable airship, comprising 3 cigar-shaped balloons, a rudder, and an operator's car equipped with movable weights. The Arion made its maiden flight on June 1st, 1863.
Huh. That's interesting. How well did it fly, though? Do you have that info?
It used a kind of the same principle that sailboats use to sail into the wind. And he would basically do these demonstrations where he would take it up into the air above a crowd and then just travel in like in a direction and start to circle the whole crowd above them. So he would just like basically take it up and start just like circling above these people in like a tight thing, and while everyone just like, oh my god, and like oohing and ahhing, which seems kind of fun.
Yeah, I love that.
He he had some success with this prototype, taking it around and showing it off to people, and he started to work on a campaign to get federal officials involved in building airships. And the New York Herald called this the most extraordinary invention of the age.
Okay, why did this not take off? What's the catch?
Well, I've got that here. So he eventually secured an audience with President Lincoln and petitioned Congress.
Boy, what? Cool.
And he even flew a model of the Arion in the Great Hall of the Smithsonian for members of a special scientific commission that included various Smithsonian officials along with other scientists of the era.
Okay.
And even with all of this, it failed to get government backing, and so the money wasn't there, and it didn't go any further.
Weird.
So this guy built a working one, a prototype, demoed it for a bunch of people, showed it to the president and Congress and the Smithsonian, and we didn't fund it.
Wow. Okay, so you know what I'm thinking as a conspiracy theorist at this point? Put on my fucking tinfoil hat. They didn't want to fund that shit because they already had that technology in their pocket with their black budget schemes.
Or if they didn't, they could reverse engineer it very easily, and they could reverse want the public
that's
to have
true.
it.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
do you think that this guy was just like, God damn you, President Lincoln, I'm going to get you for this. I'm going to get you at
I
Ford's
would honestly
Theater.
like.
Sorry, what? Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was answering your question before you even fully asked it, and that's a problem I have.
Okay.
I don't have anything about how this guy, like, what the rest of his life was like. This is honestly,
so
I don't know if this topic is full blown. It gets weirdish, but now I'm curious and want to look into it regardless.
Well, okay. So what you're saying is he was not in line behind John Wilkes Booth, and he showed up and saw John Wilkes Booth shoot Abe Lincoln. He was like, "Oh shit, I was going to do that." And then he got out scot-free.
What if he was granted an audience with President Lincoln and it was scheduled for the day after he went to that play? So the guy's all prepped to go show his fantastic What if we don't have like flight aircraft in the 1860s because of the death of President Lincoln?
Yeah, that would be a bummer. For sure.
Holy shit.
We could have had flying fortresses by now that we all lived in. But because that one asshole was like, oh, I got to kill President Lincoln because of, fucking politics or whatever.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
So the last thing here that I have before we'll probably wrap for this week, before we get into part 2 next week, is a little bit more on this whole like airships of the time concept.
A little bit of moron on an airship?
Yeah, a little bit of a moron on an airship kind of thing. So there's a book called Solving the 1897 Airship Mystery.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one for you for this episode.
It works pretty well. That theorizes that several of these airships were actually built by a handful of inventors working in secret before their various experimental crafts were destroyed by test flight accidents.
Okay, so
and this is what led me to the like basically that concept there is the offshoot third episode that we'll get to eventually, not directly following this one.
And these crafts would be built by people like Doc Brown and like Dr. Doofenshmirtz or whatever his name is. And
what's funny
Dexter from his lab.
You're not far off with Doofenshmirtz, because one of their names is Delschau.
Okay.
And this is a guy that supposedly started a thing called the Sonora Aero Club. And this was a like secret flight club for like rich eccentrics.
Why all the secrecy with these clubs? Is it just they don't want they don't want the fucking, poors joining them? Is that the idea?
I mean, I guess, or like in this case, they're all like doing these prototype things. And so I'm guessing it's to like keep people from stealing secrets.
Oh,
and
sure.
shit,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're
Okay, sure.
experimenting this stuff. So the guy's name is Charles August Albert Delschau. And I want to do an episode on the Sonoro Aero Club eventually. So we're going to get to that in the future. But there, you know, we did have the Zeppelin had actually been like the concept existed at the time. It didn't get built or like totally fly until 1900, but Count von Zeppelin's idea for a flying dirigible has already been made at this time. So, you know, these ideas were, but what I'm getting at here is these ideas were floating around.
Inventor of cool flight machines and one of the musicians in one of my favorite classic rock bands.
True.
So, kind of cool.
So a funny little postscript to this whole thing. Once this thing reached Texas, some of the stories started getting particularly strange.
Okay.
Including one here that in Hill County, 2 farmers near Abbott, Texas, did not see an airship. In fact, what they did see was a man and 6 boys float down from the sky. And I quote, "They drifted down as easily and gracefully as birds, alighting until within a few feet off the ground about 50 yards from us, where they remained stationary a few seconds and reascended into the heavens out of sight."
And
So
she
at
was
some point,
like,
Texas was like, we're just going to drop the airships entirely and make it fucking just boys flowing down out of the sky.
do you think that the woman who saw that was like, so that just happened?
Fuck off.
That's fucking weird. Is there anything else to that story, or is that it?
Not that I found. No,
Oh my
it just
God.
gets referenced a couple times as I was kind of combing around looking for stuff.
Fuck?
There's also just like a section of my notes that I have entitled "Random Extra Encounters" that are kind of for, so let's just look at a couple of these here as kind of a to tie up this episode.
And this is all during the 96,
Yes.
97. Okay, cool.
So in one account from Texas, 3 men reported an encounter with an airship and with, quote unquote, 5 peculiarly dressed men who asserted that they were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel and had learned English from the 1553 North Pole expedition led by Hugh Willoughby.
What the fuck?
Yep.
Okay.
I love how well researched this is because
So many
all of these, a bunch of
specifics.
these stories still exist and there are sources for them. So that is a win. And here's the thing: shouts out to James Rink at Super Soldier Talk. Very well
Wow,
sourced.
that's
This is
incredibly
one of
surprising.
the few. One of the most. Sometimes you don't have to give it to a moment I've ever had with this podcast. But
I don't want to
it was
like
very
say redemption arc, but it's like,
No.
I don't think we've ever had a subject of conspiracy and stuff like that who's come around to provide a wealth of information on an unrelated topic. That I don't think that's ever happened.
Yep.
Not like this.
Let's see. One witness from Arkansas. Oh no, sorry, that's actually one we already said. That's the one where the ex-attorney general claimed that they were going to go bomb Havana, but there's more quotes here that he was that these craft were going to use their quote Hotchkiss gun to quote kill
fuck?
Spaniards.
What the
So,
fuck?
yeah,
I don't know what's a crotch kiss.
I don't know what a Hotchkiss gun is at all.
Oh,
I think
Hotchkiss.
that's a made up thing.
Okay, I misheard you.
Let's see. Let's find one more good one here.
I mean, it's hard to beat a man and his 5 sons floating down to you from heaven.
Yeah,
that's hard to beat.
That one is pretty good.
I thought I was promised nude people. Where's the nudity?
Oh yeah, let me see if I can find the nude one.
Please, thank you. I'm requesting the nude flying machine story from
here we go.
1897 Texas.
So this one's not in Texas.
Oh, shit. Okay.
On April 10th of 1897, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch published a story reporting that one W.H. Hopkins encountered a grounded airship around 20 feet in length and 8 in diameter near the outskirts of Springfield, Missouri. The vehicle was apparently propelled by 3 large propellers and crewed by a beautiful nude woman and a bearded man, also nude.
Nice.
Hopkins attempted with some difficulty to communicate with the crew in order to ascertain their origins. Eventually, they understood what Hopkins was asking of them, and they both pointed to the sky and, quote, uttered something that sounded like the word Mars.
Right. So they're Europeans, probably.
The idea of like being unable to understand these nude people in a crashed ship off the side of the road, and then eventually they just point up to the sky and say the word Mars is
It's fun. That's
a really fucked up kind of image to have in your brain.
Okay. Fucked up's a thing.
In a fun way.
Yeah,
like it's unexpected.
It is unexpected, and I don't know how I would handle myself in that situation. I would probably also be flabbergasted. So
Yeah. So do you want to do a big question?
sure, I would love to.
All right. So
Yes, I would pilot an aircraft nude over California. Okay.
I forgot what my question was, and I just read it. And it's-
Good.
All right. If you could have any fictional airship appear in the air before you, but knowing that due to how this whole thing went, there's about a 50% chance of it crashing and possibly killing the people inside, which airship do you want to see?
What? Oh God. Wait. What?
Basically, what fictional airship do you want to see bad enough that you're willing that it might just
that
blow
I'm
up
willing to
and
flip a
kill
coin
everyone
about
involved?
it killing
Yeah.
everybody. I mean,
I
there's some easy, obvious answers here that I'm gonna try to not do, but like I know the easy,
we're
obvious.
talking
answer.
fictional.
No, I
No, we
know.
Okay.
Because like, why? What did you think I was gonna say?
I was worried you were just gonna say Air Force One, and
No.
comedy podcast.
I mean, look. Okay, so in the Evangelion rebuild films, there's a cool ship built from like Ava parts called the Wunder, piloted by spoilers if you haven't seen these for whatever reason, but they're like basically fighting back against Nerve, which has kind of gone rogue because these are like alternate timelines maybe sort of the Evangelion stuff, and they pilot this cool weird screaming ship called the Wunder, and my main lady Misato Katsuragi is its pilot. So I would say that because again, spoilers, turn back now if you care about this at all. In the final Evangelion rebuild movie, they all end up dying anyways. So I'm okay with flipping that coin because there's only upside in that 50% chance with that thing. I maybe get to save the crew of the Wunder by choosing this, or they just die like they already died. So, and it's, I don't know, it's fucking cool. I mean, that was the easy answer I was thinking of, but there has to be another answer. Maybe like the airships from one of the main airship from Treasure Island, because that's like kind of funny to me. Like, the
Planet?
Treasure Planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be kind of funny.
Okay.
To see a big boat.
The airships that almost killed the Disney animation division.
Yes, which I still like that. I mean, I haven't seen that movie in a million years, but I remember liking it when I was young. But,
Jules just watched it recently because turns out Patrick McGowan's in it.
Really? Who's Patrick McGowan in that movie?
Some old man that dies pretty quickly.
That's, you know what? That tracks.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm trying to think of some other airships. Maybe Snoopy's doghouse that he turns into what is he called, like the Ace,
The Red Baron.
the Red Baron.
The
Red Baron. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be responsible for Snoopy's tragic death.
This podcast kills enough dogs. We don't need to add to it.
Damn it. Sorry. I've said my piece.
I'm gonna go ahead and go. Kyle, do you remember the game Skies of Arcadia?
I do. Yes. You want?
I'm going with so that was a JRPG of the GameCube generation. I believe it first appeared on the Dreamcast.
I don't think I played that one, but I'm familiar with it.
I played it for a very short amount of time, and then my brother sold it, and I'm mad about it. So
to this day.
No, I honestly hadn't really thought about that in years, but it just popped it up, and it sounded like a funny thing to say. So, but this whole thing is basically like, what if like JRPG people were like sky pirates,
right?
And you're all in these like airships, and part of it is like airship customization and shit. Like it's it did the gummy ship thing before Kingdom Hearts ever existed.
Oh, I see. Is that true?
Kind of, and not 100%. It just had airship customization.
Gotcha.
It's not exactly the same thing. I just like to take shots at stuff whenever I can. But yeah, it's just a cool game where you're in these airships and you've got pirates and it's fun characters and like those would be fun. It'd be fun to have fucking sky pirates be a thing. Even though that probably in real life would be terrifying.
It would be kind of terrifying. But I do like it in my fantasy and sci-fi movies for sure.
I almost said the only other airship. This is why is it the only airships I can think of are from JRPGs? Because the thing I was going to say
Tales of
Sid's airship from Final Fantasy X-2.
Oh, okay.
That's like your home base for the entire game because my brother played the fuck out of that game.
I mean, airships are a cool setting for a video game, so it does make sense.
Or fucking Final Fantasy VI. I'm only thinking of JRPG airships.
I could only think of cartoons, so.
God, my brain's fucking broken. I mean, I guess I could have thought of like the helicarrier or some bullshit.
Oh, that would have been kind of cool. But I really can't think of other airships, and it's kind of starting to bother me. Like, I feel like we're going to finish this.
I started thinking about, like when I wrote this question, it was like, oh, this is easy. And then now I'm sitting here and can only think of like 3 airships.
My nerd ass brain is like, we're going to finish this. I'm going to render it. I'm going to send you the audio, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think about what I want to get for dinner. But then it's going to creep into my mind that I couldn't think of more than like 3 airships. And thinking to myself, surely I'm aware of more airships than this.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, we both are just really good at comedy because it's the rule of 3s, you know?
That's true.
So
I always stick to that rule when I'm making comedy.
Always. We never under or overcook
it's so
a joke
important
at all.
to me.
So we all read Steve Martin's comedy tell-all book.
Yeah, The Jerk, or what's the
Jerk is the movie.
Sorry,
one of my favorite movies.
I'm thinking of the book How I Did the Jerk.
This week It Gets Weird recommends Steve Martin's book How I Did the Jerk by Steve Martin.
Which, like every person who, whether you dabble in comedy or you're a professional comedian, you have to read that book. It's like the Bible of comedy. Everybody reads it.
All right. Do you want to take care of some business?
I'm ready.
All right. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/itsweirdpodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're probably there.
Twitch.tv/itgetsweird. Check it out. We're streaming. I've started doing an extra new stream that's going to, I'm hoping when I can, also happen on top of the stuff that I've been doing with Colin.
Oh yeah, aren't you doing like Game Boy stuff now?
Yeah, so I played a couple hours of one of my favorite Game Boy games of all time, The Legend of Zelda: The Oracle of Ages. And I'm announcing here now too, a week after the Twitch stream, VOD, video on demand. Like you can watch our Twitch streams up to a week after they air on our Twitch channel. But if you want to get access to those videos of our streams, they'll go up a week after on our $5 tier on Patreon. So if you're a $5 tier Patreon, and many of you are, and we love you for it, you're going to get access to replays essentially of our streams. So that'll be kind of a fun new thing. It Gets Weird Podcast at gmail.com. Email us your favorite airship that you want to flip a coin to decide whether or not the people on it live or die. Email us a list of airships, actually. That would be kind of nice.
This is one of our fun things that in like 2 years, someone is going to listen to this episode and send me a list of airships, and I'm going to be very confused.
I'm going to be like, oh, Jesus, what's this about? Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get access to the show It Gets Weird TV that comes out every other week, where right now we're discussing season 1 of the X-Files. We're in the back half of that show now. If you want to be able to vote on the show, too, you also get to do that if you're a Patreon donor. You get to vote on what show we watch next after the X-Files, whether it's X-Files season 2 or an entirely different show. We put the choice in the hands of the patrons. We also have a $5 tier where you get the show It Gets Weird TV plus another bonus show in the off weeks. Sometimes it's a movie that we're watching. Sometimes it's an episode that's me or just Nile doing our own thing, reading a book or something about conspiracies. That's at the $5 tier. So you're getting bonus content every single week. And like I said, you get access to Twitch VODs of shit that I'm doing on Twitch a week after the fact. So donate at the $5 tier. It's the most bang for your buck. Now, the least bang for your buck is the $1 tier, which is just a tip. You're just the $1 tier is considered the tip tier. You're just saying, hey, I like what you do. Here's $1 a month. Thanks for doing what you do. But if you can't donate to the show, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast. I forgot to mention that whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting about all kinds of weird shit. And that's it.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile. Come back next week for more airship UFO flap weirdness.
Yes, definitely. I'm Kyle signing out.
Peace.